Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me for this interview with author Ryan Heffernan. Ryan is an Australian author and writer. His latest work is a dreamy, soulful, funny, and ink black bipolar memoir, Clown and I, which was written in 2018. Clown and I is a unique and confronting exploration of Ryan's magical and magnetic life with bipolar disorder, where life and success have been writ large, but ruination forever lurks in the form of broken relationships, addiction, and poverty, frequently destabilizing his role as a father to a young boy. Ryan advocates for his global kin with mental illnesses, specifically those with bipolar disorder. He does so using a mixture of prose and street poetry that focuses on stories of love and loss. Ryan has also recently joined our team of bloggers. You can find his first blog for IBPF on our website. And you can find his book on his website, which we'll talk about at the end, as well as all major booksellers. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start right off the bat with just a brief explanation. What is your background with bipolar disorder, and what is the clown? Where did the clown come from?
Yeah, the clown probably sums it all up anyway, really. So basically, I got diagnosed 9 years ago. It was in my actual diagnosis session with a psychiatrist in Australia with a big organisation called the Black Dog Institute that is essentially our head organisation for mood disorders. And they went through and asked me all the sort of normal questions, about my moods and trying to identify if I was bipolar or not. And then right at the end, she said to me, look, can you think of any events, now that I've asked you all these questions, can you think of any specific events where, you displayed characteristics of being bipolar? And one major one came to mind, and it was basically I spent a week at work investigating clowns. I decided I want to write a short story about clowns, and I spent the whole week investigating. I got completely consumed. I bought books and read everything I possibly could about clowns, try and work it all out. And by the end of the week, I was convinced that I wanted to become a clown. I didn't want to write about them anymore. So I went home and went to a shop and bought a heap of makeup and went back and, basically spent a whole night dressing up as a clown. And got my partner at the time dressed up as a clown and thought this was completely normal. And then I basically wanted to go out in the street and wander the streets as a clown. And I put it on her, this is what I want to do. And she said, she just thought I was a freak, basically, and refused to do it. Anyway, but I told this psychiatrist, and she sort of absorbed it for a minute, and then just completely lost it. She laughing in hysterics, and it was the most hilarious thing she'd ever seen. She had to get up, walk out of the room in the middle of the diagnosis session, came back, sat down, started laughing again. And anyway, it kind of became a definitive moment because at the time I knew nothing about bipolar disorder. So it was very daunting to hear that I was, and I'd associated with people that had delusions of grandeur and wanting to be Jesus Christ and this kind of stuff, and so a completely wrong view of what it was. So what this did was essentially change my outlook. It made me see the funny side, it made me see the interesting side, it made me see the sort of, just the humour in the condition, which made it completely manageable after that, or a lot more manageable after that. So a significant moment. So that's why it's become kind of the way I've expressed myself throughout the time.
So it sounds like creativity is a big part of your life, and that you need outlets to kind of help you work through your bipolar disorder and the illness and all that you deal with. So did you want to describe a little bit about how writing in particular has aided you in finding wellness and being therapeutic to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd even go so far as to say that the absence of writing, when I'm not writing, I can see when I become unwell. And when I write, it is both on the one hand, I think through my bipolar disorder and just in who I am, I'm naturally a creative person, as a lot of us are, I'm told are, but it's a place to put energy. It's a place to express yourself. It's a place where, in my case, where I can articulate the goings on of my life, which are often very strange or very intense at the very least, either up or down. It's a place where I can express that. If you strip that from me, if you strip that from me, I would flounder. I don't really know what I do. That's how significant it is to me. And I've been writing since I was a kid, but I spent my whole kind of early parts of my career until I was diagnosed and had to leave as a journalist and TV producer, and then moved on to books and poetry and obviously the bipolar memoir Clown and I, but as I say, if you strip it away from me, it's key. So, I would put it above exercise, I'd put it above medication, I'd put it above everything. The one thing I would never give away is that. As a way to wellness, I mean.
Right.
And that's not to write off those other things. I mean, like I'm very diligent with medication and a whole range of other things, but that one thing, that's the linchpin.
Do you journal as well, or do you find that your poetry and other writings are more beneficial to you?
Yeah, I think particularly at the moment, the poetry, I mean, I have journaled in the past and blogged, but the poetry I find is, there's an impulsiveness obviously to the way I think, but you can just write a poem on the spot, bang, knock it over, 5 minutes, and you've told a little story. Whereas if you take on a big blog, or you take on a bigger story or an essay or something like that, it's just a whole lot more kind of, it takes a lot more of you, and you need to find the right space to do it. Whereas poetry, I just grab my phone, go into my notes, and I'll bang out a poem, and then you'll see it on Twitter sooner or later.
Yeah. So in your book, Clown and I, you discuss a very colorful lifestyle, one that's filled with a lot of adventure, impulsivity, danger, etc. You also had a very lucrative career as a journalist and in broadcast journalism, I believe. And so how have you been able to reconcile your new life that is on the path for wellness in your bipolar illness with your old way of living?
Yeah. Look, I'm still no Boy Scout, I have to be really honest, but I've certainly changed things dramatically from then. But I would say, because those years were mostly my undiagnosed years. It was within, basically I had the breakup of a relationship, but specifically it was the separation from my son. So I had him 50% of the time. So I was trying to hold down a broadcast journalism job at the time, undiagnosed with bipolar, and raise a kid in Sydney. And it was just a massive effort. And I more or less just imploded, and that's when the diagnosis came about, was through an absolute just burnout, breakdown, call it whatever you want. But whatever it was explosive and life defining, and led on my back. So, to stay in that, I think if I stayed in that career, it probably would have killed me on some level. I think I would have had a lot more trouble sort of managing my moods. Whereas now I've gone completely the other way. And instead of trying to fit into sort of those kind of jobs and have that kind of ambition, it's redefined. So I don't, more than anything, what I've chosen is a bohemian kind of lifestyle where I run my own race, and I don't clock in, do 9 to 5. I don't clock out. I do it in my time, because I am too at the mercy of my moods. But more importantly, I'm probably rambling a bit, but I find, in those sort of jobs, you've just got to turn up to again and again and again and again and again. For me, I just kept falling on my ass. I just kept failing. I kept losing jobs and that kind of stuff. So I don't miss it. I'm glad that I did it, and it changed me living that kind of life. Changed my outlook forever. So I absolutely don't regret it. And I think without bipolar, I've never done those things, to be honest with you. So I don't regret it, and I don't regret bipolar in any way. But I think that life was a foundation for the life I have now, if that makes sense. it set me up for what I'm doing now, which is precisely what I want to do, which is my poetry and my writing and hanging out with the bird and my girlfriend and looking after my son and her kids. And, you know, I like where I'm at. It's a really beautiful place. I'm glad for bipolar because it's I believe it's played a fundamental role in giving me the mindset and outlook I have. And that outlook is really positive, and it's on my terms.
Yeah. One thing that stood out to me in your book was when you talk about your therapist, I believe, who told you that boredom leads to trouble for you. I highly relate to that. So I really cling on to that passage. But I'm wondering, how do you balance staying occupied and not being bored with teetering on the edge of becoming too exciting?
Yeah, no, it's a good one, and it's a really hard one. How do you? Because I mean, the other thing they say to you like is, you know, routine, you know, this kind of stuff. And you know, I mean, I know a guy that had a breakdown with bipolar in Australia, and he was a very successful entrepreneur. And when he lost his family, he just went boom, you know, and everything went sideways. And his psychiatrist said to him, or psychiatrist or psychologist, I can't remember who it was, but he said to him, you know, you really should just go and get a job at the local hardware store, mate, and, you know, like, just take it easy, or you're going to have a terrible life. Well, to me, that's a jail sentence to a person with bipolar 2 is what I'm much more familiar with than 1, but that's a jail sentence because you're going to go insane. And if you go like that, for me, I would just implode, you know, it'd be like that. So, you know, well, I get it out of my writing. Definitely. I try to enjoy the things that I like film, books, that kind of stuff. But at some point, you know, I don't know if I should even say this, but I will follow my impulses sometimes, but less frequently and in a controlled way. So, whereas before diagnosis and in the early parts of my diagnosis, it was uncontrollable. It was dangerous, and that happened as a result of me trying to just become this clean skin after having been this wild kind of unit. So that's a long-winded way of saying it, but it's probably one of the hardest parts of management, I think. How do you lead this life that is healthy and not be bored out of your brain? It's a hard one, and it's probably different for everyone.
No, I agree. So switching gears a little bit, you mentioned your son a lot in your book. He is a big factor in your wanting to stay stable and find wellness. So how would you say that accepting your diagnosis and your positive outlook on it has made you a better parent?
Yeah, well, I mean, he played a role in that because, I mean, I think all of us know, anyone that's got bipolar, you know, will have experience where, you know, it's affected relationships. And that's another point for me, which I'm really strong on, is that, like, that doesn't get discussed enough for me in terms of therapy and stuff, is relationships. You know, how would this impact your relationships, and how are your relationships going to impact your health? Because it messes with the way you're thinking, then it's going to go bad for you. But my son, you know, I started telling him what bipolar was when he was around 5. And the reason I didn't tell him all about it, I just said, this is the name of what I've got, because there'd be times when I couldn't take him from his parents to stay with his mum. So I wanted to explain to him, I love you, kid, but there's times when it's better for you to be with your mum because I'm unwell and I have health issues too. And he's just never been judgmental. And so he's allowed me, through his lack of judgment and compassion and respect, and allowing me to just move on after an episode, you know, he's actually played a huge role in freeing my mind. So that, therefore, we have this authentic kind of relationship where, you know, all is good in the hood all of the time. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. And so you discuss mental health regularly with your son then?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I talk to him about what I'm doing. He will not talk to me about the book anymore because he hates clowns. He's scared of clowns. That's off the table. But whenever I've had an episode, or kids are like, every now and then they'll just drop questions of curiosity at you, and so I just answer them as candidly as I can, and so the dialogue's open. And he, in that sense, he's lucky. Because of his lack of judgment and open mind, he's going to go through life always having an understanding of mental illness in a way that most people never will unless they've got a mental illness.
Right. And also, if it were to be passed down either to him or maybe his future children, he'll be a lot better equipped to deal with that, with the knowledge that he's gained from you, as maybe opposed to you had not having anybody tell you about mental illness.
100%. He's set up to discuss it, and he's set up to manage it, and I'm set up to help him.
So another relationship that's really important to you is the one with your lovely girlfriend, who we'll refer to as the bird. And she is really lovely. She also lives with bipolar disorder and borderline, correct?
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to know a little bit more about that, because you talk about how relationships can really impact your life. How are you able to maintain a healthy relationship when both of you have mental illness?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, we met on Twitter. So we just hit it off in conversation. Conversation, first of all, on Twitter, just lots and lots of conversation and lots in common. And then it became phone calls and that kind of stuff. And people would ask that question, like, how do you, if you both got a mental illness, how does it work? And well, it might make sense to some people. It makes complete sense to me, especially now I'm doing it. One is that total understanding. Like, they genuinely get, like, a person who doesn't have it can only understand so much, can't they? They can understand what you tell them, what they read, but they don't feel it. They don't understand it in that kind of pure kind of way, that authentic kind of way. They never will. And that's good luck to them. But basically, if one of us has a mood shift, the other one just knows straight away, and also knows what will be helpful to you, what will be useful. And you can, on the one hand, you can pick up the pieces of mood, and the bird is brilliant, and she'll just pick my mood. Like, so if I'm starting to go up, she'll know before me, because she's reading it. We all know when you go up, you don't always know you're doing it. You're just sort of going up. She'll know. So that will clip my wings. I'll start going, oh, okay, well, I am. I'll start to come down again. There's that sort of thing. But then there's also the kind of very practical things, which is, when you have an episode, whether it be going up or going down or somewhere in between, there's aspects of your life that are affected, whether it be your work, your household duties, looking after yourself, making sure you eat, all those kinds of things. You can do all that. You can do that in a really authentic way. And so, I mean, to me, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do that. And like, I've had other relationships, and I can't compare them, because there was never that identification. There was never that real authentic understanding of what's going on, no matter how hard anyone wanted to.
And so together, have you two really kind of laid out what your boundaries are, your triggers, etc., or how does that kind of look?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the things that affect you, and we're lucky in the sense that it's similar, and I think it's similar for a lot. Like for example, a good example that came up this week, the bird had a heap of things to do, and she wrote out a list for the day and said, this is what I got to do. And she was stressing, like, about it, because it was so much. And I'm like, and her mood had already been a bit high anyway. And I said, well, why don't we just split those up over 2 days, just bite-sized chunks, and we'll just manage it. Because I don't know what you're like or what audience is like, but if I take on a heap of tasks and get frenetic, that potentially is up, and you're out of there. So it's things like that, you just, you help each other to manage them. These are the things that affect me. If I do too many things at once, I could potentially have a hypomanic. So I watch for her, and she watches for me, and it works really well.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have a very healthy, happy relationship. So I'm really glad to know both of you and get to see a little bit of insight into your life together. I think it's very valuable for people to be able to see that you can have a happy, successful relationship when both of you have mental illness.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just think, and it's not anecdotal because I'm just one dude, but I've listened to people on Twitter. Obviously, I listen to them very closely, and a lot of people really struggle in relationships with people that don't have a mental illness. And that's not saying that because you go with someone with a mental illness, that your relationship's going to be successful. Not at all. I'm not saying that, but there's a frustration there and a guilt there. For me, in past relationships, I would feel like I was letting people down because things would go sideways for me, and you're forever kind of like in some sort of state of guilt or whatever. That's what I see on Twitter, and that's what I experience myself. But I don't know if anyone's ever studied that kind of thing. But when you're in a relationship with someone who has a mental illness, that a lot of that's alleviated. And what I find is when the guilt's gone and the self beating up is gone, that shortens the fallout of an episode, and it also may ward off one.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. It just made me think of how many people I see that are actually divorcees or single parents who had a falling out with their child's parent over their illness. You seem to have a pretty healthy relationship with your son's mother. Has she always been on board with helping you through your mental illness?
Yeah, I mean, like for a series of other reasons, that relationship is not that great now, but it's functional. It's functional, I would say. But certainly in the early days, she was open-minded to it. Open-minded, and that was very good at the time. It was like, because I had hospitalizations and that kind of stuff, and so that it does, when you get like that, it does throw people's plans and whatever into disarray, and it affects people. So but I don't know, like that. I don't know. It's a complex area. Look, relationships to me really are like it's the most, and that kind of relationship with an ex, with your partner, with your family, with your friends, with your work colleagues, with your boss, like these things to me, like they're right at the top. They're right at the top. It took me a while to learn that. I had to fall on my face a lot to work that one out. But like I'm real careful now, like real careful with relationships. If they're handled badly, the impact can be catastrophic. And alternatively, if you've got good relationships, they can really, really assist you in staying well.
How do you navigate some of your more important relationships in terms of explaining your mental illness, what your needs are, kind of where your boundaries lie?
Yeah, I mean, like I've been like, let's take workplaces as an example. Like I've been really candid with workplaces because of the rapid cycling nature of my brand of bipolar. It could impact a lot. And then at a point, if it happened a couple of times, in a short enough space of time, I feel obligated. Okay, I've got to give these guys an explanation because I'm affecting the whole workplace. So that's because of the jobs I did. They were kind of pivotal in some sense. So therefore, if I was off deck, then they'd all be impacted. It's a mixed bag really. Like some of them they changed their view of you forever. they just kind of whatever. And others really tried, you know, to make this thing work, you know, so it's risky. That's just one example. Does that answer what you said?
Yeah. You know, you do have an online presence. That's how we actually connected, was through Twitter. And I know that Twitter, Facebook, etc., can be very difficult in that there's a lot of negativity. But there's also a lot of people airing their personal anecdotal experiences with mental illness that don't always fit everybody's mold.
Yeah.
How do you maintain an online presence and try to help others with mental illness, but also protect yourself from these online relationships that can sometimes be negative?
Yeah, I mean, like I've had some. I mean, I met the Bird on Twitter. I met you on Twitter. I've met some extraordinary people, some exquisite people on Twitter that I've identified with in a way that I haven't identified with anyone else before. In some respects, it's been gorgeous, but you know, in other respects, there's been some real negative stuff, kind of political and bitchy kind of stuff, and you know, people telling people what to do and all that kind of thing. Like, I don't engage with anymore. I don't engage with Twitter or Instagram in that kind of way. What I personally try, because there's just no, like, everybody's different, as you said. Everyone's unique, as you say. So, you know, we should be supporting, caring for each other. You know, like, this should be our safe place, no doubt. For me, it's about storytelling. I tell my story and my outlook at the same time, hoping that, you know, I'm creating my own little statement, which is feel safe to speak, but also like feel a sense of encouraging a sense of self-acceptance. Yeah, that there's a beauty in kind of all of us, but I stay away from that kind of stuff, and would probably go so far. So, you know, be careful of how you engage in relationships on there, because they can be brilliant, or they can not. They can send you the other way.
Do you have any kind of structure for online? Like, you know, if you see too much of this, you stay off Twitter for a day or two, or you mute things. Like, is there any kind of like structure you follow to keep yourself from feeding into that negativity?
Yeah, I mean, well, in extreme cases, I've blocked people, you know, but they're very few. They're very few. When I've just thought that it's just way too negative, the message is way too negative, so I've just gone, well, I don't need to hear this, I don't need to see this. So I've blocked, if it's inappropriate kind of stuff, I've blocked it. But by and large, the way I use Twitter, and you know, this is how I connected with you early on. If I see someone there, and especially if I see someone new, you know, that's got low numbers and they're just trying to get in there, and I'll try to connect with them and have a conversation, like get into a chat about a subject. So what I find is, over time, you know, you start to almost develop like a clan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they look after each other, and like if someone steps out of line, that clan, then it kind of gets managed. But if you get into the wrong sphere, the wrong people, so to me, it's like finding people that you identify with in what they're saying, and getting into that conversation and feeling comfortable in that conversation, so you can speak freely. And that's my only real tactic. That's my only real. It's just engage with, and you know, I pop into the same people. It's whatever, and the Bird and I are always, you know, in there having a chat, and you know, it's finding people that, because you know, like some people, you know, like for example, you know, when you get people that are real heavy on the therapy,
Mm-hmm.
whereas all their therapists, that kind of stuff, which is great, you know, they're great space, but they're probably to some degree or another kind of limited in what they could say, whereas there are no rules for me. There's no real rules for you going on there as your personal self, and there's none for the bird. So you can go on there and sort of engage with people in a supportive kind of way where you're not restricted in what you could say. So yeah, that's kind of how I use it. And I would recommend finding people that, you know, identify with, and you identify with their tone, and get into the conversation. Don't forget about trying to jump your numbers up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what came first for you? Was it writing the book to share your story, or were you already kind of connecting with other individuals with bipolar disorder, or was it all kind of a phenomenon that happened at the same time?
Yeah, no, so when I wrote the book, I'd gone through, like, my life was in tatters. It was in absolute tatters, and yeah, I had nothing, and I was crashing at a friend's house, and I put my computer on the desk and sort of, you know, sort of just got up, and then I just started writing to get myself out of a real black hole, and it worked. And I just wrote, and then after I'd written the book, I kind of prepared a few social media materials, and then started. So the whole social media thing for me started. I mean, if you look on my thing, it says that I'm on there from 2015, but that's because I knew I was going to have a book called Clan and I back then. So I just grabbed the handle, you know, and then never used it. So then it was after, and I'll be really honest, I was going to just use it as a place to promote my book, you know, in a selfish kind of way. And then, you know, when I actually connected with people for the first time who are truly, you know, understood what was going on, the book promotion became just completely secondary. You know, it just was whatever. This is about the relationships I have. So, but it was all after the book.
And so, with that being said, what got you to do what you're doing now? What kind of, you know, compelled you to share your story in such a candid way? Because, as I mentioned to everybody, his book, Clown and I, is very honest, very candid. There is an explicit content warning on the cover, so just have to share that. But I was very impressed at just how brutally honest you were. And, you know, I feel that there has to be a reason behind that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I 100%, you know, I had like, there's a chapter in the book called The 7-Year Bitch, where, you know, it was after I was diagnosed, and it was just a grind. It was real hard. I sometimes didn't manage it well. I was very isolated. I lost my career, and, you know, I was raising a very young boy, and it was a grind. It was really, really difficult. And then, you know, sort of through the writing of the book, you know, I decided, when I decided to write the book, it's like, I felt so lonely. I felt so isolated. I felt so negative, and I had no self-acceptance, you know? So when I decided to write the book, I kind of wasn't going to write the book until I was a success story, you know? And then at some point it kind of twigged and went, why do I have to be a success story to write a book? Won't people out there, that most of us who are actually struggling, the very few success stories, won't they identify more with someone who's just a dude trying, you know, a dude doing his best to deal with something very difficult? And so the book was written for people that have, you know, that have bipolar. So I just thought that they would, if I sugarcoated anything, I was being dishonest to them. It's just an act of dishonesty. Like, let's say this thing for what it is, because everyone I've known with bipolar has just done some crazy stuff. Mine's pretty loose, I understand that, but everyone I know with bipolar has found themselves in some pretty unusual situations, pretty difficult, pretty dangerous, risky. They don't lead normal lives. Everyone that I've known, I'm sure there are some that do lead plainer lives, but everyone with bipolar 2 that I know does not. So it's like, okay, well, if this is who I'm talking to, I'm just going to say exactly as it happened. Exactly as it happened. So I did.
Yeah, I think it's very unique in how you told your story, because you do share all of the sometimes terrible, sometimes dangerous, sometimes overly exciting things that you've done, but you also present yourself as a success story in the same vein, which is really important for people to hear, because you kind of say, look, I've done a lot of wild things, but that's not all of me. I'm a complex person, and I'm trying to do better always. And that was kind of the message and the takeaway I got from you, whether it was failed relationships, failed jobs, etc. You're saying, hey, I'm still in this fight and I'm trying to always do better. So I really do believe that this memoir can help a lot of people. I know that a positive outlook on bipolar is still kind of new. I come across that a lot, where people think, how can you possibly think bipolar could be a positive? And I think you've explained that very well in your book, that it doesn't have to be a negative, though. It can just be, and you're in this for the long haul, so you might as well, take a positive spin on it.
Well, look, like I'll give you an example, and I don't mean to undermine anyone or like sort of like be patronising in any way, but if you gave me now, having done what I've done, seen what I've seen, you gave me the choice of removing bipolar and me living a suburban life, barbecues and white fences and spending all my money on cars and houses and careers where I'm completely logged into something and I don't actually see my kids that much, and I'd just say no. I'll have the bipolar too, thanks, and I'll have that life. And that's despite some of it. Some days I go, oh no, here, how do I find myself here again? Particularly when I'm sitting in a hospital or something, going, oh my God, what, how did all this happen? And what's going to happen with me and my son and all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure, like I'm convinced, on the one hand, it is underpinning the things that actually make me good at what I do. I don't believe I would have been a good journalist without, as good a journalist without. I don't believe I'd be as good a writer without it. And I don't believe I would have the dark light, complex kind of outlook on the world that I do now. I don't believe I'd have the value system that I do now. I mean, I don't think I'd be leading the bohemian life if everything was even Steven, like even on an even keel. It's just, I wouldn't think that way. And I certainly wouldn't be in a relationship with the bird. We both led similar kinds of lives in some ways. Like it changes everything, it changes everything. And I'm happy to, the dark parts hurt, but I'm happy to suck them up.
And so during the 7 years that you were really struggling and down and out, just what was the switch that made you decide to have a positive outlook and to embrace, who you are and the illness that you have?
I'll be like, it was actually in the process of writing the book. Like as I'd come out of, my life was trashed. It was actually in the articulation of, because I didn't think about, I had to, you don't think about your life as a memoir, do you? So when I actually sat down and went, okay, let's go through all these aspects of my life and look at it from that point of view, I went, oh my God, like that's just some real bad stuff has happened there, but there's some real wild stuff that's happened there. And how are you even still here on some level? Like how do you find yourself? And that in that process, I sort of found a beauty in it. Like, and all of a sudden I found myself, because I sat in this box and like articulated myself to myself, all of a sudden I found myself not looking to others for their acceptance and not, I kind of became self-contained and looked at my illness in the way that I did. And that it was an evolution over time, and it's still happening now. I mean, like, I still have bad times, and I still have rough times, and I still, fall over. But when I fall over, I don't beat myself up like I did. I don't go, oh, I failed again, I've fallen over again. I just go, okay, I just got to go through this again. And I find it shorter, and the black patches are shorter. They're still there, but they're just shorter, less intense, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
We do have a question from Omar, who asked how you stop suicidal thoughts when you have them.
For me, I mean, it was, you know, it was definitely my son, because he was so young and he was in my care. And but on the one hand, I kind of thought I'd failed him, because he was the one that took up the lion's share of my negative thinking. It's because I kept impacting him by not being able to have him. Omar, so it just, so on the one hand, he kind of drove my negative thinking, but on the other hand, it was the thing that made me always go, no, I gotta do that. I gotta come back. I gotta be with him. He needs me, and this is not about me. This is about him, and he needs me, and he's told me it in so many ways, which can be real hard to do when you're down on the chemicals. It's, and everything's wrong, but something would always pull me away from a cliff's edge. Something would always pull me back. But I mean, I don't know. And the other thing, like, it sounds silly, but even having some hope, like something to cling to in your life. Like I've always had my writing and storytelling, and obviously my son. So these things they always kind of pull me back. They'd always pull me back in some way. I had something to hang on to. I decided I was going to work on a project, and I'd think about that. But if you don't have those aspects in your life, if you don't have some hope, there's got to be some hope there somewhere. It's obviously going to be hard.
Yeah. I recently read, I think it's by author Matt Haig, that he suggests focusing on one little thing each day, even if it's, oh, well, I gotta get coffee tomorrow because I don't want to miss out on that last cup. And then the next day you have your coffee and you go, well, I didn't see the sunrise, so I need to. So yeah, that's, I agree. I think hope is very important, even if it is the smallest of things, but just hope that you're going to see that one little tiny thing the next day is very powerful. Yeah. We spoke a little bit about your social media presence, and one of your biggest fans, Diane Harwood, is paying attention. She's tuned in, and she says, "You both rock. Thanks for going above and beyond through social media to help those of us living with bipolar." So
she's lovely, Diane, isn't she?
She's very lovely, yeah. She's one of her favorites. I'm not sure if I can say that. but yeah, I think that it is really important that people hear stories of those who, I really love that you can reconcile your past and your present and your future. I know that a lot of people think that they are their worst moments, and that some of the terrible things that they do in their illness really are going to set the course for their life. But I very much appreciate that you can look back on some of the things and say, were they really that terrible though? Would I do it again? No, but maybe I had fun in that moment, or I learned a lesson, or you can think fondly on some of your adventures in Thailand, was it, or Vietnam? But so where can people hear more from you? Like, where are you currently working? Any projects? Where are you active?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm active. So I'm nearing the end of writing a book of poetry and stories. So I've kind of been a little bit less active, but definitely clownandi.com, which I put up videos and memes and also stories. So there's quite a lot of content on there. goodmenproject.com, there's got quite a lot of stories on there. They're good, obviously. I love anyone who wants to engage on Twitter. I'm a massive fan, and that's @clownandi. And also on Insta, which is @bipolarclownandi. But yeah, I'm all for interaction. And one of my favorite things in the world to see, particularly on Twitter, is when someone real new comes in and they're all unsure and they're not really posting anything, and then they finally connect and you can see them kind of, I don't know, it's almost see them grow a set of wings. So yeah, if you want to engage in any of those spaces, that's great.
Okay, and so we're kind of wrapping up here. So if anybody has any last minute questions, now's the time to ask. However, if you think of a question later, please email me at agood@ibpf.org. Ryan is blogging for us on a monthly basis, so I can use your questions to help prompt him on some blog ideas. Those are always very appreciated. We love your feedback. So once again, my email is agood@ibpf.org. And Ryan, is there anything you want to close with? Any final thoughts?
No, I suppose the big one for me is, I mean, there's so many things that you know, that we hear and we try to learn, and we hear it from professionals who are great and everything, but there's you know, everything from exercise to our meds to, you know, routines and whatever. There's so many things in the list that we're told to kind of do, which to me can be really daunting, you know, to try and make sure you do that every day. But for mine, you know, the one thing that I think is the most powerful tool in your toolbox is self-acceptance. It's accepting that, you know, you won't always be successful in this. You will fall over, you know, but you will also get up again because you did last time. So, you know, so self-acceptance to me is a real big one. And that's a big thing. And what I'm doing in my storytelling is trying to like capture some of the beauty of bipolar, you know, and you know, encourage self-acceptance. So yeah, I would definitely say that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We are so excited to have had you today. Everybody, I want you to stay tuned and look out for Ryan's monthly blog with us. There's another one coming out in, I believe, a week or so. So we're really excited about that. And I love your outlook. I greatly enjoy your book. I highly recommend Clown and I for anybody who just, you know, needs to kind of relate and get a different take on the illness. I've never read a book like it, so it's definitely unique in its style. So thank you so much for joining us. Send my love to the bird.
Well, indeed. Thank you so much. It was great. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I hope everybody enjoyed. This was our first time Facebook Live doing a webinar, so I hope that was a neat idea for you guys. And once again, send your questions to agood@ibpf.org. Bye, guys.